The first time I heard the sound of an airbag going off, I wasn't in a car. I was 22, standing inside a job trailer off Spear and Lich Gardens, and one of the subs inflated a sample bag for a safety demo. It's a flat slap, like a hand clapping your whole chest. It's violence packaged as geometry. I remember thinking at the time that a device designed to save your life shouldn't sound so much like a threat. 12 years later, I heard it again through the speaker of my phone as a shaky voice memo Lauren sent me between sirens and the muffled chaos of Denver traffic. "I'm okay," she said, breathy, but there was a moan in there like someone trying to keep a lid on something. "I think." The airbag went off. "Some guy cut across Colfax. My neck! Eric, my neck!" I was 2 floors up in a skeleton of steel near Reno, watching a crane operator dance a precast stair into place while the wind tried to talk him out of it. A text from an unknown number had arrived first. "This is Officer Feeney. Your wife has been involved in a collision at Colfax in York." And my stomach did that weightless drop the freight elevator makes when the brake lets go. I yelled down to the foreman to freeze the lift and tossed my hard hat on the table, suddenly sure the hat wasn't big enough for the day anymore. By the time I hit the site gate, I was making phone calls on autopilot. I called the superintendent to cover the afternoon walk. I called my assistant to reschedule the OAC. I called my brother to ask if he could grab the kids after school if this turned into an ER thing. "Yeah, man," Nate said. "No questions because the Monroes don't do questions when sirens are involved. I got them. Text me updates." Traffic was jammed 6 ways around City Park. When I finally saw Lauren's car, a white Civic with our dent in the back left from a winter slide that we kept postponing, it was at a wrong angle to the world. A car isn't supposed to stand sideways with its nose nudged into a light pole like it decided to end its day early. The passenger airbag hung limp and chalky. A firefighter in turnout gear was talking to Lauren through the window. He had a voice like warm bread. He was telling her to keep looking at him. I recognized my wife's face long before she turned. She looked angry at pain, not afraid of it, which is how she looks at most things that slow her down. Lauren works the front desk at a salon in Cherry Creek, where the clients arrive in athleisure and tips. She coordinates people who believe their inconvenience is an emergency. She's good at making a storm feel like weather. But right then her eyes were big and wet, and there was powder dust on her lashes where the bag had kissed her too hard. "Sir, stay back," the cop said, reflexively, then softened when I said husband. He let me approach as far as the fender. Up close, the car's wrongness got sharper, the spiderweb of the windshield, the sweet burnt smell of the propellant. My hands had nowhere to go. They hung, useless, in the space between men and hurt women. "Hey," I said, and the word broke in the middle. "B." She turned her head a millimeter and winced like that was the mistake of the day. "It wasn't my fault," she said. "Not to me, to the air." He cut across 3 lanes. "I had the green. It's my neck. Eric, I can't feel if it's bad." "Don't move," the firefighter said, and I resisted the urge to tell him I'm a construction PM and I know about immobilization protocols and step-by-steps. He did not need me to be competent. He needed me to be still. An ambulance ride, a neck brace, a CT, and 3 hours later, the ER gave us the kind of relief that sounds like an apology, no fracture, whiplash, soreness to be expected. Here's a pamphlet no one really reads. Lauren's face softened in the middle when the doc said no fracture. She checked her phone before she checked on me. "I should text the salon," she said, and the words came out like she was asking permission from a boss who lives under her skin. "Text them," I said. "I'll text Nate. He's got the kids." "Tell him I'm okay," she said. I told him she was okay. Then I told myself we were okay, because when you live with risk long enough, cranes, loads, men on rebar in wind, you learn to accept that okay is a moving target. We drove home at an age-inappropriate speed in my truck, Lauren holding her neck like it was trying to escape. That night, she slept propped on 2 pillows with the careful breathing of someone determined to heal on schedule. The next week became an org chart of recovery. Calls with adjusters, calls with the other driver's insurer, calls with a chiropractor clinic off Colorado Boulevard that could fit her in tomorrow at 9:30, honey. I set up the claims and made the appointments because paperwork is my love language. I put an ice pack in the freezer that no one touched anyway. I took the kids to school and explained to Owen and Kayla that mommy's neck was mad and needed quiet. Owen, the 7-year-old who wants rules to be laws, asked if the guy who cut her off would go to jail. Kayla asked if her mommy's car would get a bandage. I told them, respectively, maybe, and not the way you think. Lauren leaned into healing like it was a project at work, follow-ups, home exercises, texts about pain levels that sound like Yelp reviews. She adopted a vocabulary of injury that came clean to her tongue: radiculopathy, spasm, trigger points. She started a little notebook where she logged episodes in relief. It was a kind of competence I admire. It also gave me something to track other than the ache I couldn't name. When you manage risk for a living, you make lists in your sleep. I recognized the signs: the pillow that had to be cold before she put her head down, the way she shut the car door with her hip, the wince at a laugh. I also recognized the signs of exaggeration that people produce when they want to be believed by a stranger holding a clipboard. They aren't lies, they're edits. 8 out of 10, she told the chiropractor on the third visit, while at home she moved like a 5. Sleep disrupted, she told the physical therapist, though I watched her snore on the couch through a Pixar movie like a woman who had found a safe cave. Insurance is a machine with a mouth. I fed it everything: police report, photos, ER paperwork, Lauren's intake forms. I copied the EOB's explanation of benefits and dropped them in a folder. I know this dance. I can hear the beat. I expected the adjuster to ask for corroboration about the pain pictures of bruises, prescription names, missed work letters, and I had those ready because the only thing scarier than a crane that won't stop is an adjuster who won't. A week into treatment, the adjuster called me directly. She had the voice of someone who has seen people at their worst and learned to sound like the decent part of the world anyway. "Mr. Monroe," she said, "2 quick things. We've received the claim for the chiropractic and PT. No problem there. We also have activity on your wife's card on the same days as those visits. It's probably nothing, but we flag overlapping charges automatically. Can I ask, does Ms. Monroe have any hotel charges we should expect to reimburse for?" I was standing in the job trailer on a Friday afternoon with my foreman arguing about slab pour sequencing on one side and an electrician murmuring about a panel schedule on the other. "Hotel?" I said, thinking of out-of-town consults and the one night last winter we put the kids with Nate and took a room downtown to remember who we were when the laundry wasn't staring at us. "Boutique hotel on Welton," she said. "Digital room key loaded in Apple Wallet. I only see it because their system ran the card through as an incidentals hold before the appointment. Not a big deal, just making sure I'm categorizing these correctly, since therapy sessions and hotel stays don't typically align." I let my eyes unfocus on purpose. Sometimes, if you defocus a drawing, you can see whether the lines work in the whole, not just in the detail. Welton is downtown. The chiropractor is up near Colorado and I-25. There's no clean way those dots connect except through story. "We'll review," I said, and I felt my voice drop into a register I usually save for ordering concrete. I hung up and stared at a calendar I no longer recognized. Lauren had told me she was swinging by the chiropractor after work on Tuesday, Wednesday, and the following Monday. She had texted me a photo of her in the little paper gown you take off to get the gel on your neck, and I had sent a heart because that's what we do when we can't show up. The time-stamped appointment emails matched. So did the EOBs. The adjuster didn't say, "I'm seeing a hotel charge that starts 2 hours after a PT appointment and ends the next morning," but she didn't have to. The phrase "digital key" in Apple Wallet did the work. I know all the arguments. Hotel holds can get pre-authorized. Sometimes they hit weird. Maybe she met a friend. Maybe she needed a quiet night. Maybe she had a migraine and didn't want to drive home. Maybe. The human brain will build an excuse out of duct tape and good intentions if you give it 15 minutes. But there are also the facts you put upright in front of you and look at without turning your head. I called Lauren. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice in a safe range, the one we use when the kids are in the room even if they aren't. "Adjuster flagged a hotel charge on Welton the same day as your PT." She exhaled, a quick little laugh. "Oh, that. Melissa and we met for a cocktail at the rooftop after my appointment. I didn't think to tell you because it was spur of the moment and I knew you were buried in that punch list. Are we not allowed to have a drink now that I'm broken?" It was a good line. It wanted me to argue with its shape instead of its content. "A digital key loaded?" I asked. "That's not a cocktail, that's a check-in." She was quiet for a second. "Oh, right." We grabbed the restroom downstairs and the hostess offered to set us up with a key so we didn't have to keep signing tabs. They do that, I think. It's a thing. I didn't think about it. I watched the wind pick up on the flat of the slab I'd been arguing about. I watched grit move across concrete the way it does when the weather wants to make mood. "Okay," I said. "Just, next time let me know." Adjuster called me directly. I don't like surprises when a stranger with a spreadsheet is involved. "Got it," she said. "Everything okay?" "Everything's fine," I said, and heard how brittle fine is when it's pressed thin. That weekend, we went to Sloan's Lake. Owen brought a mitten. I threw him soft pops he could pretend were rockets. Kayla fed geese against posted signage and laughed every time one waddled like it was late for a meeting. Lauren wore a soft collar the chiropractor had told her was optional. She laughed when the geese did. She winced once when Owen ran into her legs. The sky was the kind of impossible blue that makes people move to Colorado. On Sunday night, after the kids were down, I opened our family laptop and did the thing I hate. I looked for proof that would make denial impossible. Lauren and I share a calendar. Her entries were tidy and boring. PT, Cairo, inventory check at the salon, happy hour with M, which could be Melissa or a manager or a placeholder for nothing. I opened our Apple family account and pretended I was looking for a photo to order prints from, then pretended I wasn't pretending and scrolled the shared album. A photo caught my eye not because of what it was, 2 cocktails and stemless glasses on a bar that could be anywhere, but because of the way the reflection in the window behind it caught a sliver of a shoulder and a jaw I recognized as not belonging to Melissa. Mel is 5'7" and lives in hoodies. The silhouette at the edge of the frame had broader shoulders and a profile like a Roman coin. There's a whole genre of internet cheating stories where people catch their partners in reflections. I used to think those were urban myths, little morality plays wearing technology like a costume. Now I knew, glass doesn't lie, it just hopes you don't look. I clicked into the photo details. Welton Hotel, time stamped 8:41 p.m., the day of the appointment. Metadata is neutral like that. You can hate the message. The little numbers do not care. I didn't sleep much that night. Lauren slept on her back with her mouth open in a way that would have charmed me 2 years ago and now made me want to stand in the yard until the dark got cold. At 2 a.m., I found myself in the office clicking through credit card portals. Apple Wallet logs are thorough, so are hotels courting returns. I traced holds and settlements. A pattern began to draw itself like a heat map, Tuesdays and Thursdays that bent toward downtown. I pulled phone records and saw a cluster of unknown numbers around those days, and one known one. Ryan, a sales rep whose card I'd seen in a bowl at the salon once and joked about, the way husbands joke with themselves when they want to believe they are generous. I tried to be the man who asks his wife in the morning. I tried to be the man who says, "Hey, this is how it looks. I'm not a cop. Help me not be a cop." At 7:30, while I was making Owen's lunch and Kayla was having a theological crisis about shoes, Lauren touched my back and said she was going to stop by PT at 9. I said okay like a man who was doing an impression of himself. Then I packed the kids into the Subaru, dropped them at school, and parked in a lot across from the boutique hotel on Welton and watched the front door like a person I did not recognize. She didn't show. Not then, anyway. She hit the chiropractor at 9:32 according to the clinic calendar I refreshed like a day trader and the questionable part of myself. At 10:47, a woman with Lauren's coat came through the hotel's revolving door tucked under the elbow of a man in a blue jacket. They moved like people who had made a deal with the day not to ruin them. They moved like people who had been moving like that a while. I didn't get out of the car. The ethics of surveillance do not belong to the man watching. I watched anyway. I took one photo, a wide shot that could have been any 2 people in the city if you don't know how a body reads a body. Then I went to work and tried to have an opinion about stair treads. By noon, I had hired a PI. It took me 2 calls. The first guy sounded like Halloween. The second sounded like a man who had followed accountants through hotel corridors for 20 years. He didn't sell me packages with names like gold and platinum. He asked me what I wanted to know. Frequency, I said. Contacts, patterns. I don't need her caught on the mattress. I need a map. I want to know whether this is a hole or a canyon. He laughed, not unkindly. Canyon, he said, is a word I hear more than I used to. He told me he could give me a heat map of activity if he got a week with Lauren's routines and willing concierge staff. Hotels cooperate when they think it's about safety, he said, and when you don't call it cheating. I told him to proceed. I made a folder on my desktop labeled Documents because sometimes the lie starts with the name. I put the photo in it and closed the lid. If you want to break a marriage quietly, do it with metadata. Over the next 10 days, the PI sent me emails with subject lines like Wednesday summary and Friday observations that were polite like reports but landed like fistfuls of gravel. There were stills from an elevator camera that didn't show faces so much as companionship bodies, angled toward each other, the casual lean, the repeated outfits men wear when they are not trying to be seen. There were Apple Wallet screenshots with room numbers shadowed out. There were, unexpectedly, 2 hotels, which told me this wasn't just one favorite place, it was a habit with routes. The PI didn't editorialize. He included receipts where he could, timestamps, exit and entry times. On 3 of those nights, Lauren had told me she was running inventory at the salon. On one of those nights, she had texted me a photo of a neck brace on the nightstand and a sad face emoji. On that same night, she checked into a hotel at 9:11 p.m. and checked out at 6:43 a.m. The elevator camera, still in the morning, showed the man in the blue jacket covering his mouth as he laughed at something she said. Something about the idea that people can be funny before 7 in the morning made me want to overturn a table. I had nowhere to put any of it. Work doesn't welcome that kind of news. The job isn't a place for the human stuff, except when a guy breaks down on a balcony and you stand between him and a bad decision. I carried it the way you carry lumber alone. I went to Owen's basketball practice and didn't watch the ball. I read to Kayla and couldn't remember if I'd turned the page. Lauren moved around me, careful as a cat in a room full of glass. She was nicer. She folded the towels the way I like them without sighing at the corners. She touched my arm when she passed me in the kitchen like a person staking a claim without admitting she's doing it. The sister-in-law crack came with barbecue sauce. Nate invited us over for a Sunday backyard thing because he's the kind of man who believes chairs and meat can fix anything. Melissa, his wife, blunt, kind, a woman who says exactly one thing too many on purpose, handed me a beer and touched my shoulder in a way that asked if I was sleeping. The kids swarmed their trampoline like bees. Lauren had that hostess smile on, the one that waves at the world through a window while the house burns behind it. I love and hate that smile. At some point, the grill took all the men and a folding table took all the women, and I ended up alone on the edge of both, making sure the kids didn't invent a new way to break their teeth. Melissa slid next to me. "Hey," she said, "and a hey can do a lot of different jobs. This one was surgical. I'm not going to lie. We've known, not the details, not the times, but we've known Lauren's had slip-ups." She used her hands when she said slip-ups, turning them like she was kneading bread. "We always said it was kneading bread. We always said it wasn't our business. Except now I'm looking at you, and it feels like I've been an accessory." The thing about evidence is the folder gets heavy before you drop it. I didn't plan to do it. My body did it for me. I set my beer down, went to the car for the manila envelope I brought in case I needed to stop pretending, and came back to the picnic table where the ketchup bottle sweated in the late sun. I loosened the clasp and let the contents fan out like a card trick. Receipts, elevator stills, screenshots, times, places. If you didn't know what you were looking at, it could have been a project submittal. If you did, it was a map of a different city where a different marriage lived. Melissa's eyes tracked the page. She pressed her lips together when she saw a name she recognized. "Ryan." "Jesus," she whispered. She flipped a page and inhaled. Someone had labeled the exhibits for me, date, time, hotel, room key log. The PI's heat map, printed, glowed in oranges and reds like a satellite view of the neighborhood I didn't live in. "She told me 2 flings," Melissa said. "Not to me, to the paper, to the God she occasionally says she believes in and occasionally argues with. 2. Like that was a number she could sell me. Eric. I didn't say it to make drama. I said it because I needed someone to hear it other than the inside of my mouth." 47, I said. "Times?" Melissa asked, eyes wide. She did a math in her head I could see moving. "People," I said. "The word people is heavy when you set it down that way." She looked at me and covered her mouth. Then she put her hand down because covering your mouth doesn't change the air. "I'm sorry," she said. And the apology wasn't for me. It was for the world that lets one kind of lie move around in daylight and calls another a sin. Lauren walked up at exactly the wrong time, carrying a tray of burgers, and saw the photos, and for a second, the face she made was a stranger's, savage and cornered. Then the face I know slammed down over it like a garage door. She set the tray down and picked up the top page like it was a postcard from a city she never visited. "What is this?" she said, voice even. "Eric, what are you doing?" "Counting," I said, and it was the meanest thing I've ever said out loud. "Please," she said, "small, not here." "Where would you like to schedule it?" I asked, and hated the committee in the sentence even as I said it. Melissa stood up. "You told me 2, she said to Lauren, like they were in a hallway at high school and we were all 12. 2 flings, not 47 people. Lauren's eyes welled and hardened at the same time. "I didn't. It's not like that," she said. "It wasn't. Look, I made mistakes. I drank. I got lonely. He works late. She stopped and swallowed because the pronoun she was reaching for was about to become my fault in a way that would start a fire we couldn't put out with hose water. I'm sorry, she said finally, the white flag that isn't one. Nate herded the kids inside with an instinct I will always love him for. He closed the slider with a soft clink like a period at the end of a sentence. I stood and gathered the papers so the wind wouldn't send them through the yard like confetti. I didn't want the neighbors to have to pick up our marriage next to their fence. The drive home was 8 minutes long and 2 hours wide. We did not speak in the car. We put the kids to bed like we were rehearsing for a play where people on stage are excellent at routine. Then we went to our room and sat on opposite edges of the bed, and the house hummed and the fridge made that little sound it makes right before ice drops into its belly. I'm sorry, she said, again, and the words in her mouth were honest in the way raw facts are honest. I panicked. I tried to keep it small in my head so I could keep breathing. It was never one person. It was never love. It was like going out to the shed and finding something sharp when you don't know what else to do. That's a hell of a metaphor, I said, and felt mean again. I don't want to lose my life, she said, and her voice cracked on lose like the floor underneath it had moved. The kids, you. I don't, Eric, I'm not. I'm ashamed. I am. I just didn't know how to stop once I started lying. The PI's manila envelope sat on my dresser like a guest I hadn't offered a drink to. I looked at it, and then at her, and then at the sliver of city glow leaking through our blinds. We're going to take a paternity test, I said quietly. I need to know what ground I'm standing on before I decide what to build next. She closed her eyes like I'd slapped her. Owen is yours, she said quickly, like the speed would make it more true. Owen is? Kayla, I don't know. I think she is too. I was a mess when I was pregnant with her. You were on that high-rise job. I don't know anything. That night, I slept on the couch not because she told me to, but because the bed felt like a place where I could accidentally forgive something I hadn't decided about yet. Paternity is a bureaucratic word for a devotional question. I booked the test the next morning with a lab in Glendale that has the color scheme of a bank and the bedside manner of a DMV. Chain of custody, photo ID, swabs that look like Q-tips and taste like guilt. They did the cheek swabs for me, Lauren, and both kids. Owen went first and thought it was weird. Fun. Kayla cried because she didn't like strangers touching her face. I told myself this was for later, for clarity, for a judge if it came to that. I did not admit the other truth, that I was asking the universe whether I was a father or a chaperone. While we waited for science to do what it does even when we wish it would pause, the rest of life kept showing up on schedule with no regard for our narrative. Owen had practice, and in a spelling test, Kayla had a meltdown in the middle of H-Mart over a bag of seaweed snacks. Lauren went to work and texted me photos of clients' dogs because she knows dogs are the one bipartisan issue left in my heart. I went to site walks and listened to a superintendent tell me that the city inspector is out to get us when all the inspector wants is no one dead by winter. 3 days after the swabs, an email arrived while I was in the parking lot at a King Soopers picking up milk. The subject line was so banal it took me a second to file it as a bomb. Results available. I opened it because I am not brave enough to pretend patience. I did not read it like a narrative. I read it like I do a punch list line by line. Yes, no, open, closed. Owen, probability of paternity 99.99% for Eric Monroe. Kayla, probability of paternity 0.0% for Eric Monroe. I wasn't ready for numbers to look like knives. My body did a series of things without me. Lungs forgot oxygen is a thing. Hands forgot there was a steering wheel to hold. Eyes found a place on the dash where there was nothing to focus on so they could blur on purpose. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the milk to sweat into the cart seat. Short enough that the engine light didn't decide to throw a code for idling. I did the thing men in trucks do when the world gets taller than them. I put my hands on the top of the wheel, pressed my forehead to my knuckles, and let a sound out I didn't know my chest could make. It wasn't a cry. Crying is a decision, and this was the opposite. It was a hung sound, a note that didn't land. A call came in while I was still learning how to breathe again. Law office, the caller ID said, the one with my attorney's name in the line, like a ship you trust in weather. I didn't hit decline. I answered because I am the kind of man who answers the phone even when the person I need to be isn't home. Eric, my attorney said, voice businesslike, soft, the tone professionals use when they see your x-ray before you do. We got the lab confirmation. I'm sorry. When you're ready, we should talk about next steps. There's a temporary orders docket we can aim for, and... I need a minute, I said, and the words were smaller than I felt. Take it, he said. Then call me back. We'll go slow where we can and fast where we have to. I hung up and looked at the world that had the nerve to keep being a parking lot. A guy pushed a car past me with a kid in the seat making airplane noises. A woman loaded bags into a trunk like life was a thing you can carry with your back. A crow walked like crows do with that weird, insistent competence. None of them looked up. Why would they? You can't see a fracture on a face unless you know where to look. When I pulled out of the lot, I called Lauren. She answered on the second ring. "Hey," she said, too bright, the tone of someone bracing for a judgment in a classroom. "Results," I said. She didn't ask which. She didn't say anything at all for 3 seconds. Then, "Owen?" "He's mine," I said, and my throat tightened on mine. "And Kayla," she said, so quiet, the second word almost didn't make it into the air. "Is not," I said. I heard her sit down on whatever chair she was near. I heard a faint scrape like wood on tile, then the tiny sound of a person covering her mouth and breath leaking around fingers anyway. "Okay," she said, but she didn't mean okay, like okay, she meant okay like I heard it. "I'm going to call the lawyer back," I said, because when the world turns into abstract art, I paint lines on it until it looks like something I can use. "We'll set up a time to talk. No fighting. We will not use the kids like luggage." "I would never," she said. In the rearview mirror, my face looked like a man who had been holding a wall up with his hands and finally stepped away. I drove in circles for a while, the way you do when home is suddenly a geometry problem. When I finally turned down our street, the cottonwood at the corner threw its shadow across the curb in a shape I recognized from every August we've had in this house. The comfort of that fixed thing nearly undid me more than the email had. I parked and sat with the truck running until the engine nose started to sound like a friend reminding me I had steps to take. I texted Nate and asked if he could take the kids one more night this week. Didn't say why, didn't need to. I texted my attorney back and said, "Let's move." Then I sat there a little longer and tried to remember the last time I'd felt something and not immediately reached for a list. Inside the house, Lauren was sitting at the dining table with a legal pad and a pen that didn't have anything on the page yet. Her eyes were red in that way that makes you look like you're wearing someone else's face. She stood as if to come toward me, then sat like that was a sentence she wasn't allowed to finish. "I'm sorry," she said, again, for the 3rd or 30th time. "I can't tell anymore." "I know," I said. And I did, and I didn't, and both were true enough to stand up in. "We'll tell them together," she said, and I nodded, because one thing was still simple. Owen and Kayla would not learn what family feels like from the inside of a fight. Whatever else happened, that was a line we could draw together. I went to the sink, turned on the cold, and put my wrists under it until the skin hurt in a way I control. The house hummed like always. The fridge made ice. A mower started down the block. The city didn't know what had been decided in my inbox. Evidence is air, I thought, without meaning to turn it into a sentence, and fraud is fog. The fog had lifted. The air tasted like iron. The first person I called after the parking lot was my attorney. The second was the adjuster. I told her what the lab said without giving her a speech. She didn't gloat. Good adjusters don't. She thanked me for the information, asked me to forward the documentation to a secure inbox, and said, in the soft tone of professionals who see a lot, "We'll take it from here." I hung up and sat at our dining table with a pen I didn't need and a stack of paper that was about to become my entire life. Temporary orders are the scaffolding you put up so a building doesn't fall while you figure out whether to strip it or restore it. We filed the same afternoon. Allocation of parental responsibilities, exclusive possession of the home, boundaries. I didn't ask for blood, I asked for a plan. My attorney told me judges like plans. He told me to be boring. I know how to be boring when it matters. 2 nights later, boring went out the window. I took Owen to practice and Kayla to the playground. We got ice cream because I needed to give them something that wasn't a form. Lauren texted me twice while we were still out. "Where are you? Are you home?" Then, "I'm coming by. Don't ignore me." The texts ticked from concerned to coercive faster than I'd ever seen her move. We pulled into our street and I saw her car parked nose out at the end like an animal waiting at a burrow. She followed me up the block close enough that her headlights filled my mirror. When I parked, she parked too, hard, one tire on the curb. She got out and came toward us fast with a look on her face I had not seen since the day Kayla had wandered toward the street at 2 and she'd yanked her back like she was reeling in a fish. "We need to talk," she said, looking like talking was 3 levels below what she wanted to do. "We will," I said. "Tomorrow, with counsel. The kids are tired." "You're not taking them," she said, and for a second the pronoun didn't know whether it meant children or consequences. Owen slid his hand into mine. Kayla hugged my thigh and then wrapped her other arm around Lauren's calf because 5-year-olds think conflict is a reshuffle, not a grenade. Lauren tried my door. I locked it. She moved to Nate's driveway, then circled back like a hawk. When I got the kids inside and turned the deadbolt, she knocked hard, 7 times, the sort of knocking that isn't knocking anymore. Then she left. Then she came back and idled for 10 minutes. Then she left again. I have stalker in my vocab in the way most of us do. Movie word, story word, not a you word. I learned that night how quickly it becomes your word when a person you love doesn't know how to stop themselves from doing what panic tells them. I called my attorney. He called a judge. We petitioned for a temporary restraining order that night and then stood in front of a magistrate at 8 the next morning with affidavits that sounded like scenes and a PI report that read like a map of a city in heat. The judge was the kind of woman whose hair and glasses don't matter because her sentences do. She listened. She didn't let either lawyer turn it into television. When my turn came, she asked me exactly 3 questions. Did the wife follow you to your home and attempt to make contact after you told her to wait? Did she attempt to approach the children? Do you feel unsafe in your home? Yes, yes, and the word safe turned to powder in my mouth. Lauren cried, the small cry, the kind that says, I am a person, not a case. The judge signed the TRO for 14 days with a condition we would narrow contact to a parenting app and counsel only. And she set a return date with the phrase, we will revisit. Judges say we will revisit because time is the only tool they can use to keep humans from hurting each other while they tidy the facts. The app we picked looks like a grade book for family life. You log exchanges, you request trades, you upload doctor papers and school flyers and pictures of the science project you forgot to send the first time. Every sentence gets a timestamp and a tone monitor. It lets you talk like a person who is aware a future version of a stranger might read what you wrote in a quiet room and measure you by it. Lauren and I learned a new grammar. The I miss you and how dare you got replaced with please confirm drop off at 5030 outside the north door and thank you for the sneakers and I will have their jackets washed. The first exchange after the judge felt like walking onto a stage and forgetting your lines in a play you wrote. We met in the parking lot of the school. Owen ran to me with the bounce kids reserved for good magic. Kayla came slower, like she doesn't trust transitions. Lauren hung back because the order told her to keep space and because she wanted, for once, to do the right thing on paper. Owen hugged me fast, hard, and stepped back to narrate his day because 7-year-olds think information can stabilize a building. Kayla chose a different strategy. She wrapped both arms around my neck and squeezed until my breath changed. The pressure wasn't violent, it was pure. Knife and bandage, both at once. I looked over her shoulder and saw Lauren watching, hand to her mouth, learning the same truth from the other side. We didn't tell them words like paternity, we told them the truth, age appropriate the way my attorney, my therapist, and my gut all agreed on separately. We said grown-ups sometimes make mistakes that change where people sleep, and that grown-ups sometimes need help from judges to remember to be kind while they figure it out. We said mommy and daddy love you. We said families come in lots of shapes. We did not say Kayla is not mine by blood. We said I am always here. Then we proved it with spaghetti night and clean socks and showing up at the pickup door when the bell rings. Meanwhile, the insurance machine woke up. The adjuster's voice got stricter by a degree. She asked for dates and serial numbers. She asked for the PT appointment logs and the hotel charges in the pattern. She did not ask for my folder labeled documents. I sent a subset. She subpoenaed the rest. Fraud has paperwork. So does the undoing of it. I was not out to ruin Lauren's life. I was out to stop a train and make sure it didn't fold me into the wreckage forever. The adjuster told me that billing clinics hate sunlight and hotels don't care about your excuses when your name is on the register. I learned a lot about EOBs that month and more than I wanted about the number of vendors in this town who know how to code a massage as therapy when it suits them. Lauren tried once more to tail me. I don't know if it was to talk or to make a point to herself that she could. It was a Wednesday. I left the office on Bannock and headed toward Federal and caught her car slip into my mirror like a truth you can't unsee. I switched lanes twice. She did too. At a red on Spear, she pulled up next to me and rolled her window down. I didn't. I called the non-emergency number. I narrated my route like a man reading coordinates from a map. They sent a patrol unit to meet me at a gas station and took a report because the restraining order made it not my problem to solve with heart and mouth. I hated it and I did it. She stopped. The return hearing on the TRO felt less like a fight and more like a boundary class in a room that smelled like winter coats. My attorney said we wanted to convert to a protection order for 6 months, not because Lauren was dangerous, but because we needed the constraint to keep the wheels on while we built a different vehicle. Her attorney argued that it was punitive. The judge looked over her glasses and said with no edge at all, "Sometimes accountability feels like punishment." She made the order. We left with a set of rules that read like sentences grown-ups should follow even without a court telling them to. Don't show up at each other's homes, don't track each other's movements, don't use the kids to talk. It's absurd that a document needs to say those things. It's also the only reason some people learn. By February, we had temporary parenting time in place that gave me school weeks and her alternating weekends. This was not a trophy. It was a schedule. It was also a mirror. I looked better in it. I thought I would feel like I was stealing. Instead, I felt like I was finally holding what had been slipping for months. Owen's teacher emailed me an unprompted thank you for returning field trip forms before the reminder. Kayla's preschool sent home a drawing of our family that wrecked me. 4 stick figures, me next to both kids, and a second adult off to the side with long hair. No labels, just lines. The sort of lines kids draw when they're telling the truth without knowing it. When the divorce case wheeled toward the part where the adults talk money and the court talks like an accountant, a padded mailer arrived at my house with foreign stamps. There are a few ways I would have imagined receiving a coda to a marriage. None of them included a postmark from Lisbon. I held the envelope under the kitchen light and looked at my name in Lauren's handwriting. Inside, her wedding ring, my grandmother's thin gold band we'd sized to fit her the day we promised better, and a single page folded twice. It wasn't long. I know because I counted the words before I read them, the way you look at a construction drawing to see how many sheets you're committing to. "Eric," it said, "I won't be back. I'm sorry for 100 things and I'm not going to list them. I'm not in danger. I'm not going to call. I don't know how to fix me from inside the life I broke. Take care of them. You're better at it." The postscript was a note to Owen and Kayla in invisible ink, nothing. A court would let my kids read. Everything a mother says when she's mixing cowardice and love and doesn't know which one is driving the pen. I called Lauren's attorney. He said he'd heard rumblings. He said she'd missed 2 office check-ins. He said I should keep the letter and the ring and document receipt. He said this will help. He didn't sound happy. He sounded like a man who has seen people make permanent decisions while trying to get out of temporary feelings. We filed for a default. The court moved faster when one party isn't there to argue. My attorney said words like abandonment and parental responsibilities and called Kayla's situation what it was, a child I had parented who thought my name meant home. I didn't try to be a hero. I asked for what the children's therapist recommended. The judge gave me majority time and decision-making for Owen and, for Kayla, what Colorado calls allocation, based on the best interests of the child, wrapped in exactly enough verbiage to annoy a law student. It wasn't simple. It was right. I told the kids that Mommy was on a long trip. I told them she loved them. I didn't say she had left because of something they did. I said the opposite as often as I could. Owen is 7, which means he reads subtext on a delay. He wanted rules. When will she be back? What happens if she calls? Do we have to go to her new house? I gave him what I could. Not soon. We will answer if she calls and we will check the court order. Your house is here. Kayla is 5. She asked me if the son knows where Lisbon is. I told her the son knows everything. The adjuster closed out the claim. She called me to say the words "no fault" and "estoppel," and something that sounded like restitution might eventually knock on Lauren's door, wherever it is she's rented. I hung up and felt no victory, just quiet. An inbox that had been a machine for weeks turned into a pasture. There's no sound like nothing when you didn't know you needed it. The rest of my life is ordinary in a way that feels like a luxury hotel I don't have to check out of. Fridays, we go to Little League. Owen found out he's a shortstop because he likes being the person the ball has to pass to. He keeps a little notebook of plays he wants to try because in this family, we make lists when we love something. Sundays, we swim at the rec center. Kayla wears goggles the size of her whole face and calls out to me underwater like I can hear her. We get tacos from the truck near Santa Fe and nap like we invented the concept. We do homework and laundry and remember shoes. We are on time more than we are not. The house hums. I know the hum now. It's friendly. Nate and Melissa show up a lot, sometimes with burgers, sometimes with nothing. We talk in the driveway because the driveway is the one room that can hold all the feelings and still let you walk away without the drama of a door. My parents visit more, the way people do when they almost lost you and then didn't. Denise doesn't meddle. Frank watches the kids and says sentences he could tattoo if he wanted. Good job, I'm proud. I like who you are. The insurance adjuster sent me a neutral holiday card because I'm in her database now and neutrality is the best she can give. Neutrality feels like mercy. Therapy changed from triage to training. Max had me list my definitions of father and we crossed out everything that could be described with blood. We drew a stupid Venn diagram. Inside my circle, show up, don't lie, don't leave, teach them to tie their shoes and their sentences with the same patience. Inside their circle, trust that the person who shows up will keep showing up. The overlap is parenthood. There are 100 ways to mess that up. There are 3 to do it right. I write them on the whiteboard on the fridge like ingredients. Show up, tell the truth. Don't leave. I see Lauren in the places you see people you used to love when they're gone. The exact shade of a car going the other way. A laugh in a restaurant that matches a note you still have in your pocket. Canal photos other people post from some trip you aren't on. I don't check her social. She ghosted it or she learned how to post without me seeing. Either way, it's not my job to follow. If she comes back in 6 months, if she calls from a number I don't know, if she asks to see them, there will be court orders and therapists and a part of me that checks the air before letting a new thing in the house. I won't be the man who pretends fog is something other than what it is. Fraud loves fog. Evidence is air. The house we live in breathes. That's enough. A month ago, after a game, Owen asked me why the shortstop covers second sometimes and not others. We watched YouTube clips at the kitchen table, and I drew a little diamond on a napkin like a man who can't get away from plan view drawings. Kayla crawled into my lap with wet hair and asked if I would come to her classroom to read the book about the bear who thinks he's a rug. I said yes. Owen said, "Do you ever get tired?" And I said, "Yeah," and he laughed because he thought I was kidding. Later, when they were asleep, I stood in the doorway and counted the breaths like a contractor counts risers. It was a way to measure time that didn't involve court calendars. The last time I spoke to Lauren was in a mediated email exchange when I sent her a photo of Owen sliding into second with dirt frozen in the air around his cleats and Kayla holding a ribbon from swim class like she'd won a war. She wrote back 3 sentences. "Thank you for sending. I'm happy they're good. Tell them I love them." I did. I do. It's not their job to figure her out. It's mine to be a place where they don't have to. If you'd told me that an adjuster and a judge and a lab tech would be the people who saved my house, I would have laughed and made a joke about how even my marriage needed a project team. But the truth is, colder and kinder than that. They held the fog still long enough for me to see through it. The rest is work. The good kind. The kind with lists and dinners and bedtime stories and a rec center that smells like bleach. What would you do after a result like that? Would you fight to stay Kayla's dad? Would you draw a line or build a bridge? Tell me where you think fatherhood starts and ends and whether blood has the last word. If this story made you feel seen or mad or both, drop a comment, hit like, and subscribe for more. Share it with someone who's walking through fog right now and needs the reminder that air exists.